Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another College Football 2022 initial preseason rankings video, and I'm unveiling my number 8 overall team here in my initial rankings. It is the University of Michigan. Like all these videos, we're going to go through their schedule, every single game, talk about their toughest game, talk about their current quarterback situation, look at a few breakout players for Michigan, what is their biggest question mark, and then I'll give one bold prediction on the University of Michigan for 2022. But guys, let's get right into it with a full schedule digestion here and go through the schedule. So the first thing I see when I look at the Michigan football schedule, very interesting strategy non-conference wise. So Michigan has chosen the Art Briles Baylor route when it comes to their non-conference, aka play nobody. Michigan is virtually guaranteed to start off this season 3-0. They get Colorado State week 1. That'll be a noon game on ABC. Week 2, they get Hawaii at home. That's a primetime 8 o'clock matchup on Big Ten Network. We'll all be tuning in for that one. And then Uconn week 3. Uconn's one of the worst teams in all of FBS, and they've been one of the worst teams for like 6 straight years now. That'll be another noon game on ABC. Another quick thing I wanted to mention, kind of a little scheduling quirk. Michigan currently has 6 games scheduled with start times. 5 of them are at noon. So kind of a weird, a lot of noon games early on for Michigan, and then of course the last game of the regular season is always at noon versus Ohio State. But when it comes to their non-conference, guys, I have to say, when I was younger, I always thought this would be the way to go when it comes to scheduling non-conference. I've kind of changed my tune as I've gotten older. I really do think everyone should play at least one semi-tough non-conference game, whether it's a home and home, whether it's a neutral site, something like that. Michigan, I understand their argument. What they're saying is, let's go 3-0. Let's not do this thing where we lose week 1 to Notre Dame or where we lose a non-conference game. So in case, we do lose at the end of the season at Ohio State, we can still maybe make the playoff with one loss, even if we don't make the Big Ten championship game, because we only have one loss. We schedule a very easy non-conference and we win all of those games. So I understand the strategy. Personally, I think you want to be relevant early in the season, and you have back-to-back-to-back extremely easy games. I will say it presents a unique opportunity if you want to roll with J.J. McCarthy, which I think Michigan should do. You got to pick the more talented quarterback. J.J. McCarthy, as a sophomore, he played a little bit last year. He's a dual threat. He's a former 5-star. He's ready. I would really get him a lot of reps against Colorado State, Hawaii, and Uconn. The toughest team out of those 3, I mean, it's Colorado State, but out of the Mountain West, those 3 games should be very easy wins. And then you get into the conference schedule, another noon home game versus Maryland. Maryland is a very interesting team, with Tagovailoa, with 2 very talented receivers. They can throw the ball around a little bit, but you're at home, you're Michigan, you're probably going to be about 14-point favorites in this game. That should be an easy win. You're starting off 4-0. Then you get a game that could be really tough, or it could be really manageable, depending on the start time. And every fan base in the Big Ten will understands what I mean. If you're going to Iowa and it's a night game on ABC, that's rough, but this could be the big noon game of the week. If you're a Michigan fan, you want this game on at noon, which would actually be 11 a.m. local time in Iowa when this game starts, and you'd love to eke out a close, low-scoring win if you're Michigan, but this could be a tough game at Iowa, especially if it's a night game. It'll depend on how hot of a start does Iowa get off to. I'm sure Michigan will be 4-0 going into this game, but if Iowa's also undefeated, does ABC take that game and put it on at 7:30? Or maybe Big Noon gets it, which would be good for Michigan. You want to play at noon. You want to play this game at noon. It'll be interesting. Then although they have so many other noon games, it's almost like this game can't be at noon. You would be having 4 straight noon games because the next week you're at Indiana and it's at noon, and that's a guaranteed win, I would say. Indiana's one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. Remember when Indiana beat Michigan in 2020? Wasn't it in 2020? Yeah, they went like 6-1 in conference. I remember that. But I think Michigan's going to get their revenge here in Indiana and beat them handily. You get 2 tough games, but it's manageable because they're both at home. Versus Penn State and versus Michigan State. I really believe this year Michigan beats Michigan beats Michigan State at home. I think the tougher game will be Penn State. Senior leadership, Sean Clifford, that's a talented team. But these should be 2 games. It's manageable. You're at home. I would imagine Big Noon would take one of these games, and the other one would be a 7:30 game on ABC when it comes to the start time. Which one Big Noon gets, I don't know. Probably the Penn State game if I had to guess, or probably the Michigan State game. I think Big Noon is really trying to market this Michigan State and Michigan rivalry, but those games, they're both at home. Really manageable. Those are your 2 tough midseason games. Then you get 3 softballs at Rutgers. We respect Rutgers. They're an improved team, but you got to win that game. Let's be honest. Jim Harbaugh, come on. Versus Nebraska. You know, Nebraska's another team people are expecting to be improved. This game's in Ann Arbor. It'll probably be a noon start time unless Nebraska has a crazy good season. Then they might bump it to 3:30. But I would say easy win there. And then versus Illinois. A rare Illinois-Michigan matchup. East versus West. Home game for Michigan. Very easy win. And a great tune-up for the game in Columbus. And when it comes to the game, you know, I don't want to be mean, but it's not happening for Michigan. It would be shocking if Ryan Day, coming off a loss to his rival, now he's at home with a returning Heisman contender quarterback. You've got Trevion Henderson. You've got JSN. Michigan, they're 14-point underdogs in the preseason line. It's going to be really tough. I mean, you know, if you're a Michigan fan, after what happened last year, you got to be optimistic. It was such a great win, a total domination over Ohio State at home. But guys, I'm telling you, I'm not saying don't get your hopes up, but objectively, I don't think it's going to happen for Michigan in Columbus. It's just a very tough situation going to Columbus this year. So, talking about their toughest game, it's very obvious. It's the last game of the regular season at Ohio State. I don't even think it's a question. I would say the other tough games, you would be talking about the home games versus Penn State and Michigan State, and then the early season October 1st game at Iowa. Now, looking at the current quarterback situation, this is very interesting. They do have their returning starting quarterback, Cade McNamara, who threw 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a decent QBR, finished 24th total in QBR. And then you also have the young gun, J.J. McCarthy, the former 5-star, got some playing time last year, more of a dual threat, 5 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a QBR of 62. This is a legitimate quarterback battle, and due to the fact that Michigan starts off with such an easy non-conference schedule, I would hope Jim Harbaugh would say, you got to see how they are. You got to see how they are in, you know, spring practices and stuff. I understand that. But you would hope, if you're a Michigan fan, J.J. McCarthy would win this QB battle. He's got way higher upside. He elevates Michigan's ceiling overall as a program this year. And you would hope you've got such a, you know, opportunity weeks 1, 2, and 3. Give J.J. McCarthy legitimate starter reps. Nothing against Cade McNamara. He's a game manager. You know, we saw him. They beat Ohio State, although that was more the running game and the defense. We saw how he played against Georgia. You got to pull the plug on Cade McNamara. Go with the more talented guy. Go with J.J. McCarthy. Talking about a few breakout players for Michigan. On offense, a guy I love is A.J. Henning. There's so many different creative ways you can use him. He's a former top 100 recruit. Through his first 2 seasons, he hasn't done much, but Michigan does return very good wide receiver depth. Cornelius Johnson, Ronnie Bell. We know about the tragic situation with him catching the 76-yard touchdown week 1 of last year and suffering a season-ending injury on it. You can't count on him to come back. There's rumors he's recovering. We'll see. But this is a deep receiver room, and I really think A.J. Henning can be a great gadget player for Michigan. Give him end-arounds. Give him sweeps. Throw him a few 3rd and 3. He's a guy, 5-yard route, possession-type receiver. He's got a wiggle to him. I really like A.J. Henning as sort of a gadget player, but he should also be lined up as a slot receiver. I like him to break out. And then on the defense, Junior Coulson, former very solid 4-star recruit. Great true freshman production. He had 28 total tackles as a true freshman, got some playing time, got his feet wet. Now he's ready to step up and play, and Michigan needs to replace a few linebackers. Certainly they need to replace a lot of defensive production. Where I'm most concerned about Michigan, and this is my biggest question mark, who replaces the elite pass rush production they got? I was looking at their recruiting, and I'm not seeing the elite 4 or 5-star defensive pass rushers. I'm not seeing it. I think it's a real question for Michigan. You had a guy like Aiden Hutchinson last year, 13, 14 sacks. David Ajabo, 11 sacks. 2 guys, double-digit sacks. Elite production off of the edge. How do those guys get replaced? That is Michigan's biggest question mark. I don't know if they have an answer for it exactly, considering Ajabo would have been a first-round pick if he hadn't gotten injured, and then Aiden Hutchinson was the number 2 overall pick. So that'll be their biggest question mark. And then one bold prediction, J.J. McCarthy is starting week 1 versus Colorado State, in my opinion. I'm just going to go ahead and say that that's my bold prediction. I think it lines up so perfectly. Nothing against Cade McNamara. I know some people are going to say, well, Cade McNamara beat Ohio State. How does he lose his starting job? Really, that game was more based off of the defense. Yes, he managed the game. He made some throws, but Hassan Haskins had 5 rushing touchdowns. That Ohio State defense was a complete joke. They had 0 coaching. So J.J. McCarthy, if you're a Michigan fan, you would hope is able, with his skill set and how he elevates your program, the overall potential and the overall ceiling, you would hope J.J. McCarthy would win this QB battle and he'd be starting week 1 versus Colorado State. And again, guys, looking back at their schedule, very manageable first 4 games. That's 4 straight home games. You're going into conference play and you get an easy Maryland team, and then week 5, it really ramps up at Iowa. Start time depending. It really depends on the start time. If it is a big noon, that would be great news for Michigan. Or a 3:30 game. You would take a 3:30. You just don't want the night game. You do not want the night game at Iowa. At Indiana, very easy win, let's be honest. I think Michigan, I would be shocked if Michigan lost any of the first 4 games. So I think you start 4-0 guaranteed. Ideally, J.J. McCarthy gets his feet wet. He starts playing well. He's a dual threat. I want to see him run. If I'm a Michigan fan, obviously you don't want to get him hurt, but Michigan really hasn't had a great dual threat running type quarterback to where he's athletic enough to actually, get you a first down on a 3rd and 9. I think J.J. McCarthy can do that, and he can also throw. This is an elite prospect. So you win the first 4 games fairly easily. Week 5 is tough at Iowa. Ideally, you would be hoping for maybe a lower scoring type, eke it out win. Just get out of there with a win. You're 5-0. At Indiana, manageable. That's like a break. And then you get the 2 back-to-back home games. They're both at home. But that's a situation where I could see Michigan going 1-1 in both of those games, honestly. You get 3 very easy games after that. At Rutgers, maybe a little threat depending on how improved they are. We saw they were nearly 500 last year, but again, it's Rutgers. They got to prove it to us first. Versus Nebraska and versus Illinois, both easier matchups. I would say Nebraska, maybe. How much have they improved? I know they went 3-9 last year, but we know the story about them losing all those, close games. Scott Frost, he knows he needs to win. Maybe that's a bigger game late in the season, but again, Michigan's at home. Then they're at home versus Illinois. Basically a tune-up for the Ohio State game. If you're Michigan, you're hoping to get all your starters out by early third quarter so no one suffers any injuries. And then you're going to Columbus and you're going to get destroyed by, well, listen, I'm trying to be nice here. It's very tough. I mean, maybe a Michigan fan can sell me. They could beat Ohio State. It happened last year. This Ohio State team is pissed. Ryan Day is pissed. The overall talent on this Ohio State defense at this point, with Jim Knowles now at the helm, it's something that's so elite, and the Big Ten's never seen something like that before. And then you've got C.J. Stroud, Trevion, JSN, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, probably the best kick returner in college football. It is very tough. Any team traveling to Columbus, it's going to be very tough. I said the same thing about Notre Dame week 1. I'm expecting a beatdown, an Ohio State victory. But you could say Ohio State, they have an unproven defense. That is true. But it's a very talented, unproven defense. That's going to be an extremely tough game for Jim Harbaugh, the last game. It's going to be tough to see Michigan make the Big Ten championship this year. But guys, once again, that is the Michigan Wolverines. They are my preseason number 8 team. And you know what? There was a little bit of thought of, maybe starting Michigan initially at like number 10th or number 11th. But just looking at some of these other teams that I would have put ahead of them, it's just the thing that people have to understand with Jim Harbaugh. You can make fun of him all you want. He's been pretty dang successful at Michigan. I mean, you want to talk about the pandemic season, not being able to beat Ohio State. We understand that. But he consistently has Michigan football most years as a top 15 team minimum. Most years, they're top 10. So this is a team that's very consistent, and you have to show respect, and that's why I'm giving them a ranking of 8th overall, even after losing Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo. Daxton Hill is another guy that contributed a lot. They lost him to the NFL draft. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. I'll have my number 9 team probably tomorrow, and then we'll do number 10, and it'll keep going like that. So guys, make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.